Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on historic Market Street in the Gaffer District in Corning. I got a good feeling about this morning's show. We've got a lot to talk about. Yes, let's spend 2 hours talking about an interview with a presidential candidate. A historic interview. Because not only, according to CNN, did it boost her momentum, it is also the first interview that she has given, and then not single interview by herself, because it was a joint interview. But first interview she has given since becoming not only the nominee, but even when it was the presumptive nominee, when Joe Biden dropped out of re-election and endorsed her for president. And that, of course, is Kamala Harris. We will be talking about it, and I joke it's not going to be the full 2 hours. We will be talking about extensively. What did you think? A couple of your questions that you posed yesterday were asked. Fracking question. What would you do day one? We're going to get to all of it. Also, later on, we'll be talking to Linda and Crystal from Steuben Senior Services Fund. We look forward to that. Quick reminder, I suppose I would say, but I don't think I brought it up yet. Monday is Labor Day, so you have to get all your comments in today because we will not be in Monday. We'll be showing a repeat broadcast, or as they say in the news business, and I had a very helpful viewer remind me of this, I'll be away on assignment, as they say in the news business. So keep that in mind. Get all your comments in. Let's start with this because school is about to begin. We may have teachers, upcoming students watching this morning. We learned from the Vermont Department of Health. This is out of Vermont, not out of New York, and I'm not sure why I'm bringing this up right off the jump, but I am. Nonetheless, the Vermont Department of Health is advising educators and families to forego the term son and daughter when speaking to students. In a Facebook post on Wednesday, the department suggested using what they refer to as, and I quote, inclusive language for families in the new school year. So just preparing you. I believe school starts on Tuesday for many students, many teachers. Equity in the classroom is an essential piece of a productive and healthy learning environment. The department advised using the terms child or kid instead of saying daughter or son, suggesting they are more gender-neutral words. Now, there's a right-wing, even Fox News calls them that, right-wing social media account called Libs of TikTok. And they're known for reposting far-left content that often entails LGBTQ themes. Saying, yes, this is real. The Vermont Department of Health says to stop using the terms son and daughter in order to be more inclusive. Okay. Asked about the post, the Vermont Department of Health told Fox News that the guide was intended to encourage using inclusive language when you don't know someone's family situation. The state health department promotes a healthy equity glossary involving similar rhetoric on its website. The glossary defines gender as social, psychological, and or emotional traits often influenced by societal expectations that classify someone as a man, woman, a mixture of both, or neither, and says it is socially constructed. The site also defines internalized racism as a set of private beliefs, prejudice, and ideas that individuals have about the superiority of whites and the inferiority of people of color. The Vermont Health Department advised people working with students to use the terms child or kid. All right, there you go. The health department says the term white is a social and political rather than biological construct, and links to a 2016 video on, quote, the surprisingly racist history of Caucasian. All right. So starting your school year off with a bang. Actually, tying in with that, and we knew this was happening at a high school level. We had talked about it on the show, that this anti-Semitism that we're seeing on college campuses and in the streets, starting well before college. Listen to this. This is out of New York City. On Monday, a high school called Origins High School principal, Dara Kammerman, stepped down from her $170,000 per year position after turning a blind eye to horrific anti-Semitism at the Brooklyn school. Well, okay, good, you say. This is good. She stepped down because promoting this anti-Semitism, she should. As she resigned or stepped down, the superintendent, Michael Prayer, said she was a valuable member of the team. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because she got kicked upstairs, just like former Harvard and UPenn president Claudia Gay and Liz Mangiel, as administrators who were shuffled out of power after giving anti-Semites free reign, yet left sitting pretty good in cushy positions. Kammerman's tale is grisly. In July, Origins teacher Daniel Kaminsky and administrator Michael Bedry filed a lawsuit claiming they'd been retaliated against for bringing attention to students' vile Jew hatred. Kaminsky alleged students called her, well, I don't want to use the names, but vandalizing her classroom with swastikas, giving the Nazi salute. Pardon me, I have a little frog in my throat this morning. And Kammerman reportedly failed to bring the hammer down on teens who marched through the school chanting death to Israel and kill the Jews, just weeks after Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel. We got the street cleaner going by, if you can hear that. Instead, the school seemingly punished Kaminsky, the person who exposed this anti-Semitism, transferring her to a position in Richmond Hill High School in Queens that was set to expire in 3 months and slapping her with a poor rating. Her supposed sin, or Baudry's supposed sin, was corroborating Kaminsky's report. Now, what we find is that the principal, Kammerman, remains on the Department of Education payroll, and it's just fresh proof of how hard it is to get fired in the DOE, Department of Education school system. Unbelievable, folks. We got a lot to talk about. That was just a couple quick kind of out there stories. Harris has vowed to be tougher on her approach to migrants and now supports weapons for Israel. That was just a few takeaways. The media, I think, has again proved that they are going to do anything to get her across the finish line, and we will talk about that. What did you personally think? Because you are the actual commentators, pundits. But we're going to talk about what CNN thinks as a takeaway. We're going to talk about some of the media coverage, what former President Trump had to say. Again, yes, we are going to focus a lot of time this morning on one interview from a presidential candidate. Now, normally that type of time block would be saved for a presidential candidate that made a big mistake or said something outrageous. Nope, this is just the fact. The newsworthy fact is that the candidate for president of the United States on the Democratic line gave an interview with her running mate, so it was a joint interview, and it is newsmaking, but also groundbreaking and historic. So we will talk about that. I see some comments coming in, some waves. We're already up to 4 waves, and we're just 10 minutes in. But what were your takeaways? We're going to look at key lines according to CNN, takeaways from CNN, what some of the pundits had to say. I will preface this by saying we're not going to spend the whole show on the interview. We do have a few things here about Trump's campaign. What did you think about J.D. Vance's, that's another 2 waves right there. What do you think about J.D. Vance's speech in front of the Firemen's Union where he was booed I watched the speech. I thought it was an effective, powerful speech, but I'd like to get your opinion on that as well. So we're just getting started, just getting warmed up. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. Broadcasting live, from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us. A couple comments from viewers. Anyone who complies with this nonsense deserves what they get. And that's in reference to the Vermont Department of Health urging everyone to replace son and daughter with gender-neutral terms. And this from the health department, more insanity. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, viewer. Next up, good morning, Frank. Good morning. One question to ask anyone and everyone, okay? We're going to post this right now to anyone and everyone. The one thing we are taught about having a conversation is to make and keep eye contact. It shows not only respect, but confidence. Do you trust someone that is incapable of doing such? That is exactly how Harris's interview was. Do you trust her when she didn't give any details again either? Yeah, there was a lot of flip-flopping. Drudge Report, who is gone, I don't know if you're familiar with Drudge Report, kind of has a long history. They're the ones that broke the Monica Lewinsky story when mainstream media would refuse to talk about it. Anyway, you don't need to know the history. He seemed to go, Matt Drudge, very anti-Trump. And his headline is that she races to the middle, that she's going moderate. Let's look at the takeaways from CNN's interview. So again, back to that viewer's point, not a lot of substance, a lot of talking points, but let's go with quick takeaways and then we'll talk about some specific lines. She explained her flip-flop on fracking. She says, as vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking. I have not changed that position, nor will I going forward. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to guard against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. To that viewer's point about the eye contact, let's put that to the side. Add that to this, what I'm about to say, I should say. When she says something, I know the propensity for word salad. I get it, and maybe people talk about it too much in conservative bubbles, perhaps, but there's really no other way to explain it. That, in terms of, she adds these bonus words, if you will, and it's a very, not even confusing, just awkward statement. I'm going to read it again. I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to guard against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. Appointing a Republican to the cabinet, that was a question that was asked. She said, yes, I would. No one in particular. We have 68 days to go in this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse, but I would. Of course she would. I mean, I don't think she will, but of course she would say she will. I mean, you could get an Adam Kissinger or Liz Cheney in there and say, look, I'm working across the aisle. So that one, to me, seemed like a waste of a question. She refused to engage in Trump's identity politics, saying, same old tired playbook. Next question, please. Okay. She went into depth about the phone call that really changed the trajectory of her life, meaning the phone call that she received from President Joe Biden about dropping out of his re-election bid. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. That's just one of the takeaways. I don't want to get into that quite yet, just to kick off the show. She blamed Trump on border security. Because he believed that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. That was the quote-unquote bipartisan bill on border security. He killed the bill, a border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border. Not only push it, I would make sure that it would come to my desk and I would sign it. Walz, they claim, owned up to his mistakes. We'll talk about that as well. And then the response to Harris's policy proposals and promises of a new day in American politics have been met with from many Republicans has been, why haven't those things already happened in 3.5 years? it's always met with Republicans saying. Couldn't just be the undecided voter out there that says, wait a minute, you keep talking about day one or what you will do. What about the last 3.5 years? Well, she responded that she is talking about an era that started about a decade ago, which is when Trump moved to the political forefront. That's what's at stake, as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election. Wait a minute. To Scott Jennings' point that we have quoted so often, 12 out of the 16 years, 12 of the last 16 years, the Democrats have had control of the White House. So what era is she specifically talking about in those 10 years? So it was 4 years when all these problems started. So she's erasing the last 3.5 years. She said, no, we're talking about brand new day, starting day one. It is unbelievable. And unfortunately, and we have a piece we'll get to a little bit later on in the program, this interview and the coverage after shows how much the media is going to work overtime to protect her, to build her up before November. That is their lone job. Now, coming from CNN, they had a few lines, and I don't want to fall into quotes, but there are a few lines that I think are somewhat important. And this goes back into, again, Democrats having control of the White House the last 12 out of 16 years. She said, when asked about day one, and we had a viewer yesterday say, I hope they ask her what she'd do on day one. She said, I think sadly in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation. And I think people are ready to turn the page on that. Then, moving forward, they said, how do you feel about people that are struggling to pay for their groceries, etc.? She said, I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So she maintains that Bidenomics is a success. She said, I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so that we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work. I don't want to go through her quotes here. They asked her, is there something that specifically that's made her change her mind about fracking? She said, what I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking. This is tough without just reading quotes. We're going to get away from the quotes and we'll talk about some other things. Walls saying essentially he misspoke. It's going to be very much a Biden thing where, that's just Walls, that folksy charm. Sometimes he exaggerates. We'll talk about